Hi, Pritika. Thank you so much for joining Citizen Matters in this discussion on climate politics and climate rallies in Chennai. Just to formally introduce you, Pritika is the co-founder of FICUS, which is an environmental education organization. And FICUS has been working with middle schools around Ainavaram in the corporation schools. And they're also part of the youth groups, which are part of the Chennai Climate Action Collective. And as part of the collective, the aim has been to understand and address the intersections of social justice issues in the context of what climate crisis means for the city. Thank you so much for joining, Pritika. If I may just like sort of launch into questions around the
Thanks, everyone.
environment in the city. So, I would like to just ask you about the impact of the climate rallies in Chennai. So, it's been happening for a few years now. So, what do you see as the sort of impact that it's had on the larger climate discourse in Chennai?
Right. So there's been three rallies so far, and what we've noticed consecutively is that each rally has been a build-up of the events which are organized as a space to educate and create dialogues and discussion for what the climate crisis means for the city. So, this is what we're seeing that these rallies through these events, right? So it's not just the rally. There are always been for events which lead up to the rally. And what these events are usually educational sessions and workshops. And we try and discuss what does the climate crisis mean for us? What does it mean and the kind of problems that we're seeing being faced by which communities? What are the false solutions proposed? So that is something that we're seeing as a growing impact with the climate rally. And we're also seeing how, because these events are being conducted in schools and colleges, and many youth groups who are interested in this topic, our reach among students has gained quite effectively. So even in subsequent rallies, we've noticed the increase in membership of volunteers who are coming in to join the Chennai Climate Action Group or as part of a collective has increased. And so there are interested groups and people who previously might have been working on this individually, now having a platform to all come together, discuss what is required and how to actually take proper action, moving forward. And we're also seeing how, critical questions are now being asked. It's not like before where you only depended on a few people to ask the right questions all the time. Now this is being asked across our group of volunteers and across our schools and colleges where we've done these events. And the rally itself has been a celebration of asking questions. So the impact has been it being able to reach out to many youth groups and to also start having conversations on, okay, we hear of the different perspective. What does that mean for Chennai? What does it mean for affected communities? So the impact has been creating dialogue, creating discussions, and moving into action as well in looking at how the climate crisis affects the city.
So, a larger sort of democratization of the discourse, I think, is something that your the climate rally has managed to bring about.
Definitely.
I would like to ask you, like,
Yeah.
since we're like, because there's always a very sort of broad-based discussion around climate, and but the local conditions are what affects the material realities of the people in the city. So, what, according to you, would be the top three sort of climate challenges that Chennai is facing in, and that we may not even recognize for what it is, and what kind of attention would those issues need?
So, uh, I think what we would try to do is to not really look at it like a term as a climate emergency. It's not something new in the context of Chennai. It's been happening for quite a while. So let's take sea level rise. That's one of the things that's being talked about when we talk about the climate change, climate crisis. But the narrative of sea level rise has been going on for the past 3 decades, especially when communities in North Chennai have been facing this. Why have they been facing this? Because of continued erosion caused by the building of in North Chennai, where you notice the working class communities are living there. So the emergency in this context that we are looking at is the eviction that affected communities face and the issues that they have to bear in the name of relocation and rehabilitation that the government facilitates. And not only that, another emergency is also look at our current biodiversity hotspots, our wetlands. If you look at Ennore and Manali, 34 red category industries are being built along those wetlands. Regular gas leaks happen there. Communities who are living there are affected by it. They have their own local livelihoods which are dependent on these wetlands, completely decimated by these industries built over there. So our perspective of how do you label an emergency? We look at it as we need to address it as social justice issues. And when you bring it as a social justice issue, then you can start building on appropriate climate resilience strategies. Because there's no point just saying, okay, the sea level, where sea level rise happening? And in the context of Chennai, it's already been happening. So now it's like even before the term climate change was coined, you've been seeing sea level rise one particular set of community has been facing. So we're looking at if we have to take three top climate emergencies, and I'm using quotes here, is eviction, land resource, and polluting industries causing the complete decimation of our biodiversity on which livelihoods are dependent.
And it's sort of tying into that. I would ask how the climate collectives in the city have been working to platform voices of the people who've sort of been marginalized in this whole discourse so far. How is the movement sort of helped bring them to the fore in Chennai?
So if you look at the Chennai Climate Action Group, right, all of the rallies have always centered affected communities in a sense that they aren't marginalized at all in this narrative that the collective brings. They are front and center. So we refrain from using the word marginalized here because no, they are not going to be marginalized in this narrative and in this dialogue. So all rallies have centered the affected communities. They are given the platform to speak, to be heard, and what they say is amplified by the rest of us. So what the fisher folk have been saying, what farmers have been saying, what pollution impacted communities, what whole villages who have, their village is now part of the sea. So who are they going to speak to, and who is listening? So the rally has always been a platform for them to speak and for them to be listened to because many people don't know the issues that are happening. So what we are looking to do is to make aware of how these communities are getting affected increasingly worse because of the climate crisis. What do these struggles look like? What does a climate affected community struggle look like? And to also understand that, these are not just the issues of, oh, it's just happening in Ennore, it's only happening in Manali. These are only the issues of fisher folk people. No, this is everybody's issue. Everybody has a buy-in into this, and we're all getting affected by it. And to understand how we're getting affected by it is where we see ourselves playing a role and where we see communities being front and center, um, adding the nuance to the dialogue because it is them who are having the lived experience who are being affected by it. They know best. They know exactly what is happening more than any of us can come and talk about or get a professional or you can bring in other voices. But what we noticed is in usual dialogues of climate, why aren't these communities being brought to the forefront? Even now, I am speaking, but I am not as affected as the climate affected communities. So it's always trying to bring that voice, trying to bring the community voices, and it's not always raising a single flag or raising the voice of only one single community. It's always a collective of people who have been affected and who have not been heard, who we're trying to mainstream using the platform.
Understood. And so far, I want to sort of ask, how is your engagement been with the authorities, with the state government? Because we've been seeing a lot of movement, so to speak, with the Chennai Climate Action Plan and the Green Climate Company. But how do you, what is your assessment of these solutions or these steps that are being taken? And do you as a collective feel heard by the authorities when you platform the communities and put forth their issues? Has that been something that has worked out so far?
So that has been something that, again, because of the collective, we've been able to discuss and look at, okay, wait, I mean, like if you look at the stormwater drain solutions that have been put forward, without the understanding of where does our groundwater go. So I mean, there has been quite a disappointment to hear what the state authorities are looking at as solutions. But where we are coming in is to, lend a collaborative hand, have a space that we can create where we can engage in dialogue with state authorities. So currently, if you look at the Tamil Nadu Climate Summit, and one group who will get Nanbargal, they had invited us to come and participate in it and be at least attend the event. So we're looking at that as one positive that maybe there can be a space for open dialogue. But I think what is disappointing is that the amount of noise having to be made from our side in order to be recognized when it is blatantly obvious. And sometimes what we notice is there's a willful ignorance to actually look at the problem as what the problem is. Like everybody knows what is happening in Ennore and Manali, especially the state authorities. Why aren't we talking about it? And when we talk of example wetlands, you'll notice Palikanai Marsh is being hailed as the latest Ramsar site, or it's being recognized. What about the wetlands in Ennore, Manali, and Paravekad? Why not there? Because there are no industries in Palikanai side, right? So or I don't know. I just feel like there is a disappointment, and there is also an acknowledgement that there's a willful ignorance happening from the state authority side, but we're not willing to be as cynical and to just be like, oh, we're always having to, be subversive and having to, always be protesting, but to create that space for dialogue. And we are hopeful, uh, at least as our agenda for the next year, for the upcoming year, is to maybe have a roundtable discussion with other members in the government to at least just let's just have a dialogue. Let's have a discussion. We're not pointing fingers here, but we're all talking about the same issue. At least we hope.
And sort of building on that, I wanted to ask you, how do you see the climate movement in the city and climate politics in general in the city evolving in the coming years? Like, what is your vision for that?
So I think a lot of people are now understanding that the climate crisis is beyond poor polar bears and the glaciers melting. They're able to understand, okay, uh, the slight nuances and the many intersectionalities of the social justice angle in the climate crisis. So what I see it as evolving is, even as our platform is to continue to meet people and other youth groups to educate, understand issues based on what they are sharing with us, and to bring attention to the specific ways in which Chennai is being affected by the ecological crisis. How do we do that? I see that as a constant stream of gathering evidence uh, with affected communities, creating conceptual markers for local audience to relate with, and come up with specific demands that we can put forward to our governing structures. So that is a gradual build-up I see as people looking at it as having to step into one's politics, having to understand the nature of our caste class oppression, having to really look at the intersectionalities of the climate crisis. And I think, at least through being one of the 8 groups of the collective, it was very heartening to have such conversations. We had conversations from something like air pollution to what does evictions mean, to what does it mean to lose one's livelihood. It felt like even though we were talking about several different things that could be isolated, we were all connected. And to be able to have that conversation and to have a group of people, a group of eight groups of us along with other individuals. I mean, it wasn't just 8 youth groups. There were so many other individuals who were part of the conversation and, looking to make a move on it. So that was very heartening. And I see with subsequent years, even as the whole climate crisis I don't want to use it as a bad word, but is trending. I hope that these conversations I see these conversations actually having a far greater importance and push.
And how do you see how can Chennaites and especially young people like how can they be part of such a movement? How can they get involved? What are the various ways in which people who are interested in people who might want to join the collective or take any action on their own or within their own communities? How can they go about like doing something like that? Where do you begin? Where do you suggest people begin?
So I would suggest beginning by, not being intimidated by the climate crisis narratives as something that someone else is talking about that you feel you might not know enough about. Because even me as a person who entered the conversation on climate crisis, I was like, who am I to talk about? I don't know enough. I'm not how do I say, where are my credentials to talk about it? So I would say the first thing for any young person, especially, is to not be intimidated by the climate crisis narratives, but get curious. Begin asking questions. Look at what solutions are being proposed and look at it in your local context. What does it mean for me? All you have to do is ask questions, and there are already groups of people asking these questions. They're all over the place. They're hashtagging the hell out of social media. So find these people, find these groups, join them, and also continue to question them. Question what do they mean when they say these things. So even for me to understand why are stormwater drains an issue took a while to understand. At the first time I didn't get it. I was still like, okay, but the roads are all flood free, it's fine. So it takes a while to understand. And as long as you can find groups who are equally questioning and open to learning, that's well and good. So the first thing is, don't be intimidated, ask questions, find other people who are equally asking questions, and join these groups who are doing meaningful intersectional work is what I would say, because focusing on just one issue and leaving out completely a whole phase of things is not helpful. If I were only to hold a banner that said save the animals and completely not include human communities, I'm not doing anyone a favor over here. So to understand the intersectionalities is important, and read a lot, learn a lot, question a lot, and join these movements. It's very easy. I used to feel very intimidated by people talking about such things, or how can I be an activist? Sometimes activist is looked at as a bad word, as a scary word. But what the Chennai Climate Action Group and the Climate Action Collective showed me is it can be a celebratory space just for learning. Just for that, it's a wonderful thing to join, and don't be afraid.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very encouraging, because intimidation or being wary or not being sure is the thing that perhaps holds a lot of people back. So this has been very illuminating. So thank you so much for joining us, Pritika, and enlightening us on
So,
what is happening in the city with regard to the climate
thanks
movement.
for that.
Yeah.